everyone. My name is Shany Dror. I'm very excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share with you my research. I know you are also really happy to hear my talk because it's the last one before the wine reception. So let's get started. First of all, I want to explain what I'm doing here with everyone around me speaking about infants and development and stuff like that, and I'm here with my dogs. If we appreciate that, yes, language is uniquely human, but it might have some components that are not uniquely human and are shared with other species, then we would want to look at other species, right, to understand where language evolved from. And specifically, one place we would want to do that is probably in the social domain. And we have here a list of a bunch of different social cognitive abilities that might be related and might also appear in other species. And along this list, at the end, you'll find here the eavesdropping, which is what I'm going to be talking about this time. So eavesdropping, we can define it here as the ability to extract information from observing other individuals interacting. And this has a huge fitness benefit because you won't need to put yourself into this compromising position. You can just listen to other people or other individuals and extract the information without endangering yourself. If we go back to language and are wondering how does this translate to language, then we know that infants or children, they can learn language in a variety of different contexts. And one of this is through overheard speech. In other animals, we have in bonobos one study that had 2 participants of unculturated bonobos that showed that they could also learn labels of objects through overheard speech. And also an example from gray African parrots with the model rival method, although it is important to note here this is not completely eavesdropping, because what you have in this situation is 2 people talking and the bird is observing them, but they are occasionally also interacting with the bird. So it's not clear eavesdropping, and also there were some problems replicating this. Also, I want to draw your attention to the very low sample sizes that you have here. So again, why dogs? Among these very interesting species, why would we want to study an animal that drinks from the toilet? So unlike all those impressive species, dogs during the evolutionary history, so during domestication, they actually evolved in our human environment. Also, when we have a puppy, normally it develops in our house, in the Western society, in an environment which is very similar to that of a developing infant, okay? So arguably, they are much more relevant to these types of studies than wild animals that you have to take from wild and have a very limited exposure. And what do we know about dogs and their ability to socially learn things? We know that by a very intensive, strict regime of training, you can train a dog to copy human demonstrators' action. This is called the do-as-I-do training method. This is not eavesdropping in any way because, first of all, you have to train the dog, and second of all, when the dog is observing the interaction, there is a lot of ostensive cues directed towards the dog to make sure that the dog is following and being able to replicate the action. Studies about actual eavesdropping in dogs mostly looked at the ability of dogs to form a preference for one person, for example, if that person is like more generous in giving more food. But then follow-up studies found that there was a strong component of local enhancement here. So it is not necessarily clear at the moment that dogs at all can do eavesdropping. And now I want to move to the star of the show, meet Mugsy. Mugsy is a very special dog. Mugsy can learn the names of many toys, so many dog toys. And if you have a dog at home, you probably know you can quite easily teach your dog to do actions like sit, down, stay. But actually what we found in our research is that dogs that learn names of objects, so ball, frisbee, rope, these are very rare, and that's very hard to find them. When they do have the ability to learn the names of objects, they do it extremely fast. In one of our studies, the dogs could learn a new object after hearing it only 4 times. Okay, so they're really rapid at this. The way they do it is by engaging in social interactions with their owners. So they're playing with their owners. The owner is saying the name of the toy, and the dogs are picking up on those names. Importantly, the dogs can also do exclusion. Okay, so if you put a bunch of toys that the dog knows, and you put one novel toy, and then you say a novel label, the dog can bring you the novel label. But it does not necessarily create the connection between the novel label and the novel object. It just kind of excludes what it already knows and says, okay, that's what you wanted. But not necessarily making the connection. So to our main questions, do the dogs actually have to engage in these social interactions? Or can they just observe the social interactions and extract the knowledge from there? So these are our methods. We had 10 gifted word learner dogs. And for these types of studies, actually 10 is a very big sample size. Normally these studies include 1 or 2 dogs. And we tested them in 2 conditions. Our control condition was a condition where we basically had the dogs actively playing with the owners. This is what you would typically do when you're training these dogs to learn the name of a toy. And the observational condition when the dog is observing the interaction. And this is what you're going to see now.
The evergreen. This is evergreen. Where's evergreen? It's evergreen, yeah. It's evergreen. The evergreen.
So, yeah, the owners had a lot of fun with this. One of the owners is repeating the name of the toy and passing it to the other owner. Both of them are completely ignoring the dog. In some of the conditions, the dogs were free to like sit in their bed or go around the room, but the dogs that were more excited were in their box. And importantly, the duration of this demonstration is 1 minute. It was repeated twice a day, and then for 4 days. So overall, the dog sees this for 8 minutes. And then we replicate the whole process with a second toy, because if you remember, the dogs can do exclusion. So we have to have 2 toys to make sure that when we're asking a dog to retrieve a toy, it actually does it because it knows the name, not just choosing the novel object. So this is our test procedure. And because the dogs, as I said, very rare, located all around the world, we have to do the tests online. And what you see here is the owner in one room, the toys in a different room. And this here is one of the new toys, and this is the second new toy. And all of these are old toys, so there are 10 old toys. We use the toys, you're going to see soon why. We kind of need to turn the dog down a bit because they're very excited. So we use these to kind of get the dogs to calm down a bit. And we first ask for an old toy, and then we ask for a new toy.
The first toy we're going to ask for is the penguin.
Okay. Let's see. Where's penguin? Where's penguin? Go get penguin.
Off she goes.
Yeah. Follow Maxi.
Good job.
Awesome. Next toy is going to be evergreen. Take your time.
Okay.
Let her concentrate, and when she calms down.
Lay down. Lay down. Lay down.
As you see, she's a bit of a firecracker, and she needs a lot of massaging and calming down to concentrate.
Let's see. Where is evergreen? Where's evergreen? Go get evergreen.
And launch the dog.
Yay! Oh no, come back, Maxi. It's okay.
It's the first time she's allowed to get the toy, so obviously she's really happy. But she manages to do this despite her excitement. We have, for each of the 2 new toys, 6 trials, so it's 12 trials overall. And when we calculate later the probability that the dogs are successful, we consider only the new toys, being very strict with our chance level using 50%. So the results. What you see here is that at the individual level, when we tested each dog with a binomial test, we found that in both of the conditions, 7 out of the 10 dogs performed above chance significantly. Also, as a group, when we used the Wilcoxon test to compare the group performance to chance level, also the groups performed above chance in both of the conditions, in the control and in the observational condition. We were wondering, could it be that they're learning during the test? Because if you remember, they're super fast learners. Well, if you look at the first trials with both of the 2 new toys, there are 10 dogs, so there are overall 20 trials. The dogs are basically correct from the onset. So they do very little mistakes, which means that already at the beginning they're correct, and they're not learning during the test. And importantly, there were no difference between our control condition and our observational condition, the experimental condition, which suggests that they learn equally well when they're interacting in the social situation or when they're observing the social situation. So one more thing we wanted to test is there a difference between their performance with these new toys that had a very small exposure of only 8 minutes and the toys that are very familiar with? And again, we found that in both conditions, they were very good in both toys, very close to ceiling level, and there was no difference. So what have we found? Well, first of all, I don't know how many of you have dogs at home, and if you've tried to train your dog to do sit or down or stay, I bet it didn't take them 8 minutes to learn that. For those of you who don't have dogs at home, you'll just have to trust my experience as a trainer. It does not take 8 minutes to train an animal to do a new action, okay? It takes much longer. So this by itself is quite an interesting finding. But I think the most interesting finding here is the fact that they were able to learn the new object just by observing the interaction. They didn't need to actually actively engage in it. And I think compared to other studies that try to examine this phenomena, our results are very robust. So the dogs were basically very close to ceiling performance. We replicated this across several dogs. Most of these studies only work with 1 or 2 subjects. And the dogs showed quite a uniform performance, which did not depend on local enhancement, because we presented the stimuli in one condition, and then we tested it in a different condition. But what does this mean? So I think this takes us a bit to Sandra Waxman's end of lecture yesterday. When we look at this component social interaction, what are actually the things that the dogs are picking up on? What is facilitating their learning process? And there are a lot of options here. Could it be that this is the gaze of the humans? Are the dogs following this? Could it be that it's the movement of the objects? There are a million options here that we should definitely try out, and I'm interested to hear your opinions on it. Also, what does this mean cognitively? So what are the dogs doing? Could it be that they're taking their previous information that they have gained during their life about these kind of interactions, and then they're implying this in the novel context? So they're moving from the first person to a different perspective. And are they able to tune into the conversation and segment the target words that are important for them? And how are they doing this? So are they using those sense of cues that the humans are giving? Are they possibly using the speech patterns? Because we know that owners often use a dog-directed speech, which is very similar to infant-directed speech. So these are all questions that I'm really interested also to hear your opinion on. And there are references and Maxi's butt. And with this, I want to thank you very much for your attention, my collaborators, and of course the dog owners and the dogs that helped in the study. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shany. Very interesting. The last questions for today.
Okay, this is really cool stuff. Thanks very much. So 2 questions. Are all the gifted word learners border collies? And secondly, what if it was just an association between a speech sound, like from an audio from a speaker, associated with the object?
Yeah, great questions. So most of the subjects are border collies. In this study, we had also Maxie's a mini Aussie, a blue heeler, and a Labrador. So we have a variety of different breeds. And association, is it just like classical association? Something we would really love to test, it is, and we're thinking how to test it. It's really hard to test it, to be able to isolate only the, to take out the social stimuli is going to be really difficult if you want to compare the two conditions. But if you have any ideas on that, I'm really interested, and it's a direction we're looking into.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I have a different question, and I don't know if you've thought about the answer to this, but when you put up the question, what does this mean? I guess what I'm wondering is, what do we think that evergreen, or the pink object, what do we think evergreen means? That is, what are the reference of evergreen for the dog? So does evergreen refer to that single individual? Or are they abstracting? If the new individual that was somehow similar, would they think that was also evergreen? And can they learn words? This is just a panoply of questions. Answer whatever you like, but I want to know what it means for the dog. That is, can they learn words for more than the object qua object, but a property of the object?
So
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the great question. I guess you're kind of going into the idea of categorization, right? Are they forming a category, maybe, somewhat? Well, I don't know what I'm not sure what it means for the dog, other than yay. But we have one study that shows that they spontaneously categorize. So if you present them with, if they have a bunch of rings and they have different, like this is green ring, and this is yellow ring, and this is big ring and small ring, they form a category of rings. Okay, so that's maybe one thing that it means to them. We also have preliminary results suggesting that they form categories depending on the affordance of the object. So if you pull with it, or how do you use this object, that also helps them form categories. And there are some other studies that, not from our groups, that tested if the dog can perform multiple actions on the object. So that goes a bit into the direction of, does evergreen mean go get evergreen, or does evergreen mean the object? And it seems that they can also do that, so they can form multiple actions.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. So when you say they categorize, do you mean by that is the measure, you say ring and it identifies other rings? Is it name-based, or is it just a visual categorization? Just curious.
Great question. So the way it was tested was, these dogs are, we kind of find them at some point, and then we're like, what can we do with what we have found? This dog had a bunch of rings, and all had the component ring and different additional names to that. And then we tested new rings, novel rings that she did not have. I think that's really interesting, and we should test that if they generalize the same name to more than one object. Thank you.
Thanks for a very nice talk. Actually, I was thinking about the possibility of having reversibility in the association you train. So what I mean is that in all the cases, the dog got a specific word which somehow induces a specific action of picking the right object. What about if you want to conceive an experiment in which there is no instruction, in which the animal is free to pick an object, bring it to a place, and then you would have something like two loudspeakers, one saying the right word, the other saying the wrong word. You would balance in order to have one before the other in all the conditions. And then you allow the animal to put the object in the right or the wrong place. Do you think they would manage that? So the reversible situation. No label, you pick, and then you choose the right word.
I think we have something that goes somewhat into that line with buttons. So you want to see if the dog can use a button For example, if you tell the dog, like the dog can tell you which object is in a box. So I guess that would be a bit reverse, right? The dog will see the object and then he will go and press the button that says which one this is. Does that kind of capture your direction? Because, well, I mean, again, as you saw, Maxi is very messy, but she's like very representative. And getting them to like drop the objects is not always very easy. Thank you very much. It's a great question.
Thank you very much. And let's thank all the speakers again.
All right.